Hello, everybody, and welcome to Tales from the Fandom, the podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. Today's episode is brought to you by In the Reads. In the Reads provides beautiful, affordable artwork of the vibrant worlds found within your favorite books, TV, and films. From all wood bookmarks featuring illustrations and quotes from such fandoms as Star Wars, The Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, Outlanders, and more, to fantasy and real-life maps drawn in the style of Tolkien. Go to inthereads.com and check out what is available. Like something? Use code TALES10 at checkout to get 10% off your order. A link will be in the show notes along with the code. And now, let's get to the episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Tales from the Fandom. Today, I am joined by Raisin Cosplay. You might have seen her work on Instagram. Excellent Kamala Khan cosplay. Elizabeth from BioShock. You need to check out her Instagram, Raisin Cosplay. The links are going to be in the show notes, and then, of course, we'll be hitting it up at the end of the episode. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Happy to be here.
I am so excited to have you. I stumbled across your, like we were talking about before the show, your Kiki with your husband as Tombo, and I was like, that's great. I love the energy from it. And then, of course, like the Miss Marvel cosplay is like Miss Marvel is one of my favorite like new Marvel characters like from the comic books, and then of course with the TV show just makes it even better. And it's like I can't pass up people that cosplay her. Like that's always wonderful to see.
Yeah, there have been a lot of Miss Marvel cosplayers popping up, so you might have your hands full.
That is not a bad thing. I will take all the Miss Marvel cosplay I can find because she's such a wonderful character, and I love her so much. And I'm so excited that she got a TV show and possibly future movies in the works as well. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I've been reading her comics since they debuted, and I never ever thought that she would get her own MCU show ever. So it was pretty surprising to me too.
Absolutely. Now, one of the cosplays that you do is a fandom that you're super into, and it's something that I recently got into as a spectator, which I'm sure will come up. But you're into the Mass Effect video game series.
Yeah, into is probably an understatement. But yeah, I love Mass Effect. I'm currently doing Liara to Sony from the series, and 7 days coming up soon, November 7th. So I hope to post my first photos of her that day.
Awesome. Now with Mass Effect, how did you get into it? Was it like when it came out you were like all about it, or did you stumble across it? Did somebody recommend it to you? Like where did you get your start with it?
Yeah, I definitely didn't like play the series until after the third game had already come out. So the same year that the third game came out, I want to say it was like 2013 maybe. Um is kind of when I got into it, and it was one of my first PC games. I really hadn't considered myself a gamer back then. I was in high school. I didn't even know PC gaming was a thing. Like I had definitely played games, obviously like the Nintendo games, the handhelds. I used to play COD at my cousin's house, but I had no idea that you could even play games. I could just like download games on my little laptop and play them. And so that was a series that was kind of older, so my little Toshiba school laptop could handle it. So that was kind of how I got into it. And a lot of people ask me, like, what about the series makes you so attached to it? And I never have an answer. I really don't know why I like it so much. Maybe it provided escapism during hard times in my life, or it's kind of like about this very heroic character that faces like a huge threat. It's something that's just like otherworldly. Like I can really escape to it and be someone that's not me when I play the game. So maybe that's why I like Mass Effect so much.
Okay. Do you have a favorite of the three Mass Effect games that you like? Do you prefer like one of them over the other two?
Yes, I do. And my answer has never changed. So recently, BioWare, the developer, um, did a remaster, sorry, not a remake, a remaster of the trilogy and released it, the Legendary Edition. And even after that, my favorite is still the very first game, Mass Effect 1. It has very, very like mysterious kind of horror vibes that I feel like get lost in the second and third games. But it was my first open world game. Other than Skyrim, I might have played Skyrim first. I don't remember if I played Skyrim first or if it really was Mass Effect, but it was like this incredibly mysterious sci-fi world and this like unknown threat with, and it was huge. It was graphically still holds up beautifully today, especially if you play the remaster. It's absolutely gorgeous. But it was really ahead of its time. And I was pretty like enamored with that open world like sci-fi environment. I'm pretty into sci-fi. I'm sure we'll talk about Star Wars too. So yeah.
It was interesting because, BioWare did like the Knights of the Old Republic games like prior
Yep.
to like the Mass Effect series, and then it's like here comes Mass Effect, and it's like their whole new thing, and it's like I love it. Like I fell in love with the characters and with the story, and you are totally right because I had never considered the thought of like one being more of like that mysterious like horror type vibe going on to it versus like the second and third one with what they get into, and it is a tonal shift for the game franchise, and I that had never crossed my mind at all ever. I'm blown
Yeah.
away over here.
Yeah. It was definitely like aesthetically different than the others. I loved like the lens flare, the grain, the motion blur really gave it like this unique um uh this new unique atmosphere in the game. Um but you can also see the Star Wars influences in it for sure. Like I feel like Knights of the Old Republic definitely had similar of that mystery vibe. That's because you wake up and you don't know who you are and all that, and you don't remember your past, and like that mystery vibe is definitely prevalent in the first Mass Effect game too.
Now, I've got some very specific Mass Effect questions that I am obligated to ask, and my first one, especially because it relates to Mass Effect One so much, and because it is your favorite game, I have to know how good of a driver are you when you are driving the tank thing around on the planets?
You know what? I would say above average for sure. The first time I played it, I didn't do many of the side missions, which is I strongly recommend, like especially if you have the legendary edition to play the side missions. There's some really great side missions on there. And but like my recent playthroughs, I try to get a 100%. And that also means doing all the crazy like Mako related fetch quests. So I feel like I think there is a possibility I played Skyrim first. So if you've ridden a horse in Skyrim and tried to go crazy places in the mountains and stuff, it's pretty similar. So I feel like I had a little bit of that experience trying to traverse the world and taking the Mako places where it shouldn't go.
If you can ride a horse, you can drive a Mako.
Yes.
Okay. How do you as far as your shepherd goes, do you stick to um one track, or do you stick to different tracks like on each of like whenever you do like a playthrough? Is it always I'm going to, do you choose the same paths that you generally choose, or do you like change it up?
I always try to, and then I just end up playing the same way anyway. I pretty much always play as a Paragon. I always play as a Vanguard. That is the best class, in my opinion. It's the most fun because it has the charge power. and that's a lot of fun. And it's like you collect your energy and like literally charge at opponents, and especially with like in Mass Effect 3, the really big scary reapers like the Banshee, it's actually really fun to charge right at them. And I play similarly in other games. So like in Skyrim, I play as two-handed, which is pretty similar. Like you charge in and take on your opponents head on. So that's, I definitely always choose a Vanguard. I've tried playing as other classes, and they're just not as fun for me. And I definitely can't ever do Renegade. I can never be a bad guy. I always try to do it. People are always like, Renegade's so fun with FemShep, but I can never do it. I have played as male shepherd maybe once or twice, but my heart belongs to female shepherd. She is voiced by the amazing Jennifer Hale. So I can't pass up her voice.
That was one of the things where, like, even like, because I watch streamers play it on Twitch, and I've played it a little bit, and I can't with the male shepherd. I think the only thing that gets me down with the male shepherd is that, like, with the female shepherd, you get locked out of romancing certain characters, and it's like, I'd like to romance that person. Like, why can't everybody be romanceable? Why do you have to lock it to male shepherd and female shepherd? But
so, fun fact, I think a lot of the characters were supposed to be romanceable, like by both shepherds, and be bisexual, but then like Fox News made, like some kind of, I remember the news story, like they were like, this is like very pornographic and there's sexuality and gay people in it. And then so they died it down. But I agree that the romance options for male shepherd are a little bit more fleshed out than female shepherd. In general, when the games originally came out, female shepherd was really, really overlooked, and she really just has a cult following. And a huge part of it is Jennifer Hale. She's a big advocate for female shepherd, and she was the reason that female shepherd got her own unique default appearance in the third game. That being said, I do love Mark Meer, who voices Shepard. He's so active in the Mass Effect fandom. He's constantly interacting with the fans. He goes to Dragon Con dressed as Shepard. He's a really, really great guy. And a lot of fans, I think, like his voice acting because it's less emotional, a little more stoic. So easier to kind of project your own personality and your own feelings about a situation onto a character who doesn't have as much emotional cadence in their voice. So I hear people that like his Mass Effect 3 performance a lot more. Like he definitely improves, because when he started out as Shepard, he wasn't actually supposed to be the Shepard. He was like a placeholder voice for male Shepard, and they ended up keeping him, so he wasn't nearly as experienced as like Jennifer Hale, who is literally like a god of voice acting. So I think they have their merits. I'm just personally, when it comes to a video game, I'm a gal, so I gotta stick with the gals, because they're not, you don't always get the choice to play as a gal. So that's kind of why I have more of an attachment to her, for sure.
Oh, I totally understand. And speaking with the, going off the topic of the romances, do you romance in your game, or do you, and if so, like who do you romance?
I do. So for the longest time, just because Garrus is considered like the quintessential femshep romance, I used to romance Garrus a lot. My first romance was probably Thane.
Okay.
But he, spoilers, dies. And so he does not last as a romance. And I wanted one that was like, more, that really stuck with you throughout all three games. And that was Garrus. But as I matured, I felt like the beginnings of their relationship wasn't as fleshed out. And as much as I loved Garrus, I felt like there had to be another romance that had more of an evolution instead of just starting randomly in Mass Effect 2, and that was Liara. So now I actually do romance Liara.
Okay. I've only seen like the Garrus romance. That's generally like what I stumble across is the femshep and Garrus. My thing, and it's a hill that I will probably die on alone, is that I wish that Rex was romanceable because I love the
You're
dynamic.
not
I'm
alone,
not
and you don't
alone.
have to die on the hill. No, definitely not. Definitely not. A lot of people also wanted to have um Morden as a romance option. And I think in the Andromeda game, people really wanted to have a Solarian option, but I think like biologically it doesn't work out.
Okay.
And that's why BioWare didn't do it, especially with Mass Effect Andromeda. They had a lot of steamy seams in it. So you couldn't really do that if it doesn't work out biologically.
I totally understand that one.
But it really would be cool if they had romances like that where it wasn't sensual, where it was like, because there are people like that. There's asexual people who still want to be in romantic relationships and stuff like that. I think it'd be cool if they explored. I guess they kind of did with Edie and Joker. I mean, those are not playable characters. But they have like a relationship that doesn't really have a biological aspect to it. But yeah, I guess like it would be cool for them to explore some romances that don't have that physical element.
Absolutely. And I know, that they're coming out with another Mass Effect at some point. I'm not sure when, but that would
We don't know either, but it is coming.
that would be exciting to have it is something like that, and to have those options where it's a romance without the the sexuality built into it. That
For sure.
definitely awesome. I do have to ask as a Mass Effect fan, how do you end your game? What is your choice for the ending once you get to the end with 3?
I do always choose the destroy ending. I don't feel that there isn't really any other option with our threat, the Reapers. Really, that's your goal from the very beginning. That's everybody's goal from the very beginning. And I think the only reason anyone chooses the other options is because they don't believe. So with that ending, it destroys all synthetic life. So that would include Edie, that would include Legion and the Geth. And that's really what gets people, I think, is they don't want to do that. Also, originally when the games came out, the destroy ending also destroyed like planets and stuff. Like it destroyed a lot of parts of the universe, but they created the extended cut DLC, which was free to download after all the controversy, and that definitely brings down the destruction factor. The other endings I don't feel are genuine in the sense that the Reapers are trying to trick you. I would not take them for their word for anything. So I wouldn't try to merge my mind with them or try to control them. I think they just have to go. They have taken quite literally like quadrillions of lives over the course of tens of millions of years and stuff. So I don't feel like there's any other option. So that's why I choose the destroy ending. There definitely are people who are proponents of the synthesis ending, which is where you can choose to like merge the Reaper technology with everybody, and everybody becomes like a synthetic and organic hybrid. But I don't feel like Shepard has the authority to make that kind of decision and make everybody change everybody's biology without their consent. I feel like that's trickery. So
I will say, with the ending, the person that I was watching stream got to the ending, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna," he pulled the trigger on the little blue kid, and then it's like he started freaking out because he's like the game started ending essentially. It's like that I didn't mean to do that. It's just I didn't
Yeah.
expect to
Yeah,
have that
people do that out of
response.
frustration. Yeah, it's like something people do out of frustration because they're given these like three impossible, horrible choices, and they have to somehow choose the one that's not as bad as the others. A lot. I'm very active in the Mass Effect subreddit, and there's always people like, well, I didn't know that this would happen if I shot the star kid. Yeah, that's definitely a surprise ending that they snuck in there because I think they knew people would get frustrated and see what happens if they shot the kid.
What if you could, with the next Mass Effect coming out, what are you wanting from it? What are you looking for in that future Mass Effect game?
Yeah, so I know a lot of people like the fourth game, Mass Effect Andromeda, was really controversial, but I honestly personally quite enjoyed it. Like, yes, narratively it wasn't as strong as the other its predecessors, but I would really still like to see that revisited. And the devs, the trailer for the next game have like the teaser trailer that they created definitely hints that the story that there's going to be a merge of some kind of the story in Andromeda and the story in the Milky Way. So, and we're definitely going to see Liara again. So I'm excited to see. Yeah, I think I'm hoping that they continue that story. I don't need another Shepard story. The story from the first three games is over. I really would like to see the story continue in the Andromeda galaxy. I know it's very controversial, but I personally enjoyed that game, and I don't need to revisit the Reapers or Commander Shepard or the Milky Way.
I totally understand that. I'm nodding my head over here, like, yep, yep. Let's get some more stuff. Let's see what happens. Let's go from stuff. Um, and you had mentioned, we kind of mentioned with Knights of the Old Republic, the Star Wars universe and the fandom that's another fandom that you are into. And one of the things that I love, because Star Wars is such a generational fandom, like people get into it from all sorts of entry points: original trilogy, the sequels, the prequels, the cartoons, video games. Where did you get your start with Star Wars?
Good question. I know that I definitely watched the original trilogy first. But I think the first prequel film was really like Kate was like really more my time. So that's kind of what like the marketing and stuff for it. People would talk about it all the time. This like the story of Vader, really, like story of Anakin really, really intrigued me. And that's what got me into it. And let me tell you, the Clone Wars, I watched Clone Wars. I remember as a kid watching like on Cartoon Network, they would like before Clone Wars was coming out, they would have like these like little mini documentary style like previews about the creation of Clone Wars, like behind the scenes and stuff. And I was hooked. Like I watched Clone Wars since day one. I consider Clone Wars to be the best Star Wars media to exist. I love that story, and nothing quite gets me as emotional as like Anakin does. And Anakin's not nearly as lovable in the prequel trilogy, but when you watch Clone Wars, they really, really flesh out his character, and you fall so hard in love with him. And Ahsoka, obviously, like this character that like people didn't like at first.
Mm-hmm.
One, because she was, a young girl, and two, because she wasn't like, and she was original to the Clone Wars series. But now is easily like one of the most loved characters in the entire Star Wars universe. But yeah, I think just Anakin's story and like the Clone Wars and the prequels really, really like I was just so intrigued by his whole rise and fall. That's really what got me into it.
I love that you brought up the Clone Wars TV series, because it's one that I got into very late as a person that loves Star Wars. I remember when the Clone Wars cartoon movie came out, and I think I still have not seen it to this day. And I was like, oh, I don't really like the animation, but then I gave the Clone Wars TV series a chance. I was like, oh, let me check this out and watch it. And within like the first season, it's a few episodes in. There's an episode where it's like Ahsoka's like probably on the verge of death. She's all by herself, and she gets through the whatever the problem is at that point. And I was like, I'm hooked on this, and I've got what I think is like 5 or 6 seasons at the time. I was like, oh, I've got a lot of TV shows to like episodes to watch, because it was Clone Wars TV show was what everybody wanted, the like essentially what the prequel movies should have been.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so good. And I'm glad that they took the time to be able to tell those stories of not just Anakin and Ahsoka and Obi-Wan, but the clone troopers and the Jedi Order, and seeing like all these different things going on. And it's like, if you don't like Clone Wars, like, because there's something for everybody in Clone Wars, like like political stories, war stories, like espionage type stories, like it's got everything.
Yeah, I really consider it one of the core stories. Like, I'm never going to say, oh, you're not a real Star Wars fan if you haven't seen it, but like, let's be real here. You don't know Star Wars unless you've seen it. I feel like it's really, really, really one of the core stories in it. Like, you can just skip probably the first prequel film and watch that instead. And so much of current TV, like obviously there's Rebels, but Mando, and like Ahsoka makes an appearance in that. You really can't fully appreciate the Boba Fett and Mando stories if you haven't seen the Clone Wars. And there's lists out there that like tell you what to watch without all the filler and stuff. I'm actually rewatching the last couple seasons with my husband now. And it's really like, it's a kids show, but there's some heavy stuff in it. Like, we're like watching it and we're like, oh my God, this is not for kids. Like, I don't know how people like the kids are watching this like traumatic stuff going on. But I really consider it to be like a must watch. You have to watch it to really, really fully appreciate not just Star Wars, but like the prequels at all. Like, I didn't feel much attachment to Anakin. I didn't fully appreciate him as a character until I watched that show. For sure.
100%. And not only that, like, and I think when they released that last season where they tied everything in to like the Revenge of the Sith movie, and it was like the Ahsoka 4-part episode at the end, and it's like essentially a mini movie, like if we're talking about like a record player or a record back in the day, like the A side is Anakin's story, which you're seeing in Revenge of the Sith, but on the flip side, you're getting to see like what's going on with Ahsoka at the exact same time. And it was is so beautiful and so heartbreaking. And it's like, oh, here's Ahsoka, like she's gonna come back to the fold. Maybe she'll like reunite with Anakin, and then it's like, oh, they've each got their own things to do, and it's just heartbreaking.
There is a fan cut out there somewhere that combines exactly what you're saying, like combines the final movie with Ahsoka's arc from the final season and like cuts it together, and it's incredible. I'm like trying to remember the name of it, and I don't remember, but I remember when the final season came out, it was like this huge, like somebody put it together. It was like pretty big. People were like, holy crap. Like they like rewatched the final season and the episode 3 like together as this like mashup. I have to look it up. I don't remember what it was called, but it's really incredible, and nothing gets me emotional like Order 66. And I feel like with every show, like every new Disney Plus show, they gotta sneak that in somewhere. Like in the Obi-Wan show, they start right off
Mm-hmm.
with like the Order 66 flashback, and I'm like crying watching it. Yeah, I feel like it's such a it's sad, but not in like a Game of Thrones way where it's like people are just thrown away for no reason, you know? It's like tragedy with purpose behind it.
Right.
And that's kind of how I feel.
I Yeah, it is something like it is one thing to like watch it in Revenge of the Sith, but it is totally different to see it play out in like like with Clone Wars or with like you said, like the Obi-Wan opening. And like it is absolutely like you get those tonal, like again, like the tonal shifts of like it hits you a lot harder. And I don't know if that's because they're getting to spend a little bit more time with it. You're connected to these characters that you've grown up with and watched for years and years and years, and now you're seeing, it play out in that way. Like it's definitely like it hits a lot harder.
Yeah, I feel like if you don't watch Clone Wars, and I have to also give Rebels a shout out. In a lot of ways, I feel like the latter half of Rebels is better than Clone Wars, even in a lot of ways. And I know like a lot of people don't watch it because of the art style. It never really bothered me at all, but I just feel like and I think that's why Disney kind of switched from doing films because like the sequel series was pretty controversial, but Star Wars is like a world where you have to flesh things out. You can't just watch like a 2-hour movie. I feel like that's why Disney has switched into like making a lot of serial content for Star Wars, because those two series, Rebels and Clone Wars, they flesh out so much of the lore and the characters and make you feel so much more than the films ever did. I feel like you can't really get that kind of emotional impact from, Order 66 or whatever if you don't watch the Clone Wars. It's kind of just like, okay, the clones were actually bad, whatever. In the original clone games, before they made Clone Wars, it was like the clones actually knew, so they retconned that. So in the games, the clones knew that they were going to turn on the Jedi. Obviously, they retconned that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just kind of how it is. It's like you don't really know what's going on there, like emotionally. And then you watch, and in Rebels, Kanan was there for Order 66. And I think Kanan and Hera's story is like the best love story in all of Star Wars. Very emotional, and like I'm very I guess attached to the love stories you get in these sci-fi action movies, these space operas. I love having that romance element and that emotional element, and like the discussions of the human condition and the flaws of people. And that's really what Star Wars is about the imperfections of people, including the Jedi Order, that the Jedi were not right in enforcing like their very strict ways. That was why Anakin fell from the light side. And Rebels really explores like this idea that the dark side is not inherently bad, and that there are creatures in the Star Wars world and people in the Star Wars world that are gray, that are in the gray area of the Force, and they live off of the Force in like a very natural way. And that's stuff that is not fleshed out in films. You really have to watch those animated shows to really get that part of Star Wars.
Absolutely. And I wanna say, like, jumping off of like having them, they have movies in the works, but they're not anywhere close to coming out at this point. But one of the things that I'm loving with their TV shows, whether it is the continuation of the Clone Wars, Bad Batch, The Mandalorian, Boba Fett, Obi-Wan, Tales of the Jedi, Andor, like what they are doing and what I'm loving is that they're getting into all of these settings, all of these types. Like the Mandalorian is like totally a spaghetti western for a good portion of it. Andor it is like this, the building of the rebellion / spy stuff going on. Obi-Wan is like this character study of like what Obi-Wan's been doing and up to. And it's like I love that they're getting away from what they had been doing and really getting into like these nitty-gritty niche type like settings and stories that they're doing, and just building this world where even you hear like announcements in the background of the shows and you're like, oh, I hear an announcement and they're referencing something else that they mentioned in some other show, or tying it to a movie. And I love what they're doing with it. I love the characters that they're creating and that the worlds that they're playing in, and just really expanding the galaxy.
I agree, especially about the characters, like moving away from the Skywalkers. Because for the longest time, it's like, oh, Obi-Wan and Yoda were the only survivors.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that can't be true. Like there's got to be other, there other capable Jedi that escaped or whatever. And I don't know if you've played, shoot, I'm totally blanking. I like had it. It's the EA game that came out. I'm totally blanking.
Is it is it Fallen Jedi?
Fallen Jedi.
Okay.
Yes. Jedi Fallen Order. Oh my
yes,
gosh.
okay.
Yes. Excellent game, excellent story, visually stunning. The gameplay is so much fun. I mean, you get to wave around a lightsaber. But that's another story. Kanan is another story of a Jedi, and Kanan and Ezra Jedi that lived, that survived, and they create their own rebel cell. And so is Jedi Fallen Order. It's about another Padawan that escaped and like hid his force sensitivity for like the longest time, and he has his own rebel cell. Because what is the rebellion? We really only see one side of it in the film, but there are all these cells that pop up, and much of them are people that are force sensitive, former Padawans, Jedi that survived. It has to be that. And so I love what they're doing with this narrative that the Skywalkers are not it,
Mm-hmm.
and that Obi-Wan and Yoda were not the only survivors. And I cannot wait for the next Fallen Order game to come out. If you should watch, there's like some really good fan cuts of it on YouTube. If you don't get the chance to play it or you haven't played it, of the story. It's an incredible story, and the planets, oh my gosh, reminds me a lot of Mass Effect 1, actually, like going planet to planet and exploring all the Star Wars lore and the landscapes and stuff. Like, I just love these stories about these other Jedi that survived and are trying to bring back the Order and like just, survive under Sith rule.
Now, I know with the Ahsoka series, they've announced, several of the characters coming, from Rebels. Like Hera's going to be there. Sabine, the kid who I'm blanking on his name. Ezra is going to be in it. Like,
I love Ezra. I have to interrupt you for a second, because he's like Ahsoka, this kid that starts off really annoying and the fandom hates, and then he becomes this like amazing, capable Jedi, just like Ahsoka. I just love that. I just love that.
And I will fully admit, and it's something that's been a long running thing on this podcast, is I have not watched Rebels.
You should. There's a lot less filler in it than the Clone Wars. It is shorter.
Yeah.
The first season definitely slow, but my God, it picks up, and the lore that you get is worth it. Alone, forget the story, but the lore is so good. The characters are so good. Hera is another character that is like infinitely, like universally loved by the fandom. You have to give it a chance if you're a Star Wars fan. It's a quick watch. It's much quicker than Clone Wars, so I do recommend it.
Yeah, it is on my list, and I've made it through at least like half of the first season, and then I I don't know, like the energy of me watching it just fades away, or I get distracted by something else and I don't come back to it, and then I've got to restart it
The
again.
first season's boring. It's definitely a little boring. It's slow. But it picks up so fast. Like you got to just plow through. Like you don't even have to fully pay attention the first season. You could just have it on during dinner or like while you're working or something. Just have it on, plow through the first season because my God, it gets so good. So good.
I'm going to take your word for it, and when I start it up, and I'm going to have to keep you updated and be like, okay, I've made it through, and now I'm getting into the good stuff. Once I get through that first season. Now, with out of curiosity, because there's so many shows that are coming out now with Star Wars, like Mandalorian, season 3's coming up, and the Ahsoka show's coming up. They're doing another, I think, another Visions animated series of like the little standalone shows is going to come out. Um, what would you love to see as a show? Like if they said, you know what, hey, we're going to do another show. Who, like, is there a character that you'd love for them to like follow, or like some kind of like story that you'd love to see is set in the Star Wars universe?
I'm really excited for the Ahsoka show. I'm excited for more Mando for sure. I mean, it's so cheesy. It's so cheesy to say, but like obviously every Star Wars fan wants to see more of Clone Wars Anakin and Obi-Wan. So when I this is, I know people are going to hate on me for this, but like obviously when I watched Obi-Wan, I wanted a little more than just one little flashback scene. Just because that's such a hugely beloved character, but I'm looking really forward to the Ahsoka show because Rebels ends on a cliffhanger and it was supposed to be continued in another series and then they never got around to it. So this is Ahsoka. The Ahsoka show is the continuation of Rebels. So I do recommend watching it before you watch Ahsoka. So just seeing Ahsoka back, are you kidding? That's the one character, but we have her back now. So I'm really excited for the Ahsoka show and to have Ezra back.
Okay. Yeah, I think, as a Star Wars fan from like the way back, not like the way back to where I saw it in the movie theater originally, because I'm not that old yet, or not that old ever. But as somebody that, movies on the VHS tape, and then seeing the prequels in the theater, and going from reading all the books that eternally came out, and just adding to it. I love that they've expanded into the like the TV shows and get to tell these stories that are taking, instead of, again, like a 2-hour movie, we're getting essentially like a 12-hour TV show or a 10-hour TV show. It's just so wonderful, and I'm so excited to see where they decide to go with the stories that they're going to tell. And I'm looking forward to the Star Wars universe a lot more than what I was, a couple years ago.
Yeah, I'm just, I think people felt all kinds of things when Disney bought Lucasfilm. But for the sake of continuing Star Wars, it's definitely been a great thing. And I think people were like upset too when they decanonized all the Legends stuff, the extended universe. But that I also think is a good thing because it gives new fans a place to start fresh and tell new stories. And the old stories still exist.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
But I also loved the Star Wars comics, but there were so many, and they were not all good.
Yeah,
So
yes, that's correct.
So after Disney bought it, we definitely got less frequent Star Wars comics, but very, very good ones. The standalone Vader series, incredible. I think it's short. It's a limited series. I think it's only 6 issues or something like that. It might be longer. It might be 12 or something like that. So if you get the chance, I do recommend that because, spoilers, it explores really Vader's the beginning of Vader's resentment towards Palpatine, and he finds out how or he tries to find out how Padme died, because remember in the end Palpatine tells him that he killed her. So that just alone, even if you read just that arc, very, very worth it. There's also Princess Leia miniseries that's so much fun. So I love the extended universe comics and stuff. I don't read as many books nowadays. I really wish I did. I didn't finish it, the Ahsoka book. I read it, but I didn't get to finish it. I wish I was a less busy person to read more books. But yeah, I love what they're doing also with the High Republic stuff. I think they're really trying to establish a universe outside of the Skywalker saga to continue Star Wars in the long run, and like do more Star Wars stories just in the universe outside of the Skywalker saga. So I'm very excited for what's to come for Star Wars.
Oh, I would make some punny joke about like the whole, we've got the whole galaxy in front of us or something, but I just I couldn't connect it too quick. I'm not nimble right now on my puns or my dad jokes. But yeah, looking forward to seeing what they do. Excited to see what they come up with, and keeping me on the edge of my seat. I know, like with Andor, it's like every episode I'm like, that's it. I need more. But that's
I
what
still
like
haven't seen Andor, or Tales of the Jedi. That's why I gotta like rewatch Rogue One. Yeah, so unfortunately I didn't have the pleasure of seeing Rogue One in theaters, and then when I finally did watch it, it was like at a party with a bunch of stuff going on. And so I really have to rewatch that before I get into Andor. But I hear amazing things about Andor, and I obviously am so excited for Tales of the Jedi because it does go back to the Clone Wars era. So obviously very, very excited for that, and that's why I've been rewatching the last couple seasons of Clone Wars. And also because my husband hasn't seen the final season of Clone Wars. He's horrible about that. So I have to make him watch that, and I have to make him watch Bad Batch, and then we can watch Tales of the Jedi.
It's like, okay, let's go. We got 3 episodes tonight. We gotta keep moving on it. Gotta keep moving.
I know. And then he gets mad if I watch it without him. Like, okay, well, you're a slowpoke, and I want to watch this stuff as it comes out.
I totally understand. I've been in that same boat where it's like, can we please watch something? And then when we try to watch it, typically she'll fall asleep, and it's like, okay, well, we'll have to start that episode over again and try again. Sometimes it takes a couple tries to get through a 20-minute episode. It's like, so I understand where you're coming from. I understand. So we're gonna leave these space operas behind and shift gears totally to another fandom that you're into, which I will say, I have been trying to educate myself on this fandom for a while now. I have like a few favorite characters, and I've read some comic books and stuff. But you are into DC Comics. And I did not grow up with DC Comics. I was a Marvel person. So I've been trying, Raisa. I've been trying to get better about DC Comics.
Well, nowadays most people are Marvel fans, but I've been reading DC literally as long as I've been alive. I've been reading DC or just comics actually my whole life. And actually, like, comic books are kind of gendered here in the United States, but I was born in Bangladesh, and everybody there reads comics. It's very much not gendered. Archie comics are really, really popular there, and so that's kind of where I got started. I'm a big fan of Archie comics. I have a lot of vintage Archie comics, and obviously from there, DC was the king before the MCU. Before that first Iron Man movie, DC was ruling, especially in the animation department. Teen Titans, Young Justice, Batman the Animated Series. So you don't have to read the comics to love DC or enjoy DC. You just gotta watch those old animated shows.
Oh, I loved Batman the Animated Series. That show still holds up to today. I love getting to see it when I make some time to put a few episodes on. I think it may be one of if not the best like Batman thing ever. So yeah, I've seen like the animated stuff, but like for the comics, I also started with Archie comics back in the day, and then when we had moved from wherever I was getting the Archie comics to like another place, and it like had a spinner rack of comics, and I ended up getting Marvel comics versus DC comics, and I think that just set me on the path. But yeah, the DC animated stuff is phenomenal work. I love it.
Yeah, and also Batman Beyond was so ahead of its
Yes.
time. Like all those shows is what I grew up with. I grew up with the Justice League show, especially. That was like my biggest, like my favorite show ever as a kid. Um, just because like seeing all the heroes like together and like you don't see that as much these days. Like now it's like, oh, every hero's got to have their own movie, and then there's a big crossover, but back then it was like right away all the kids already knew who Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman are, so they just started, they just chucked everybody in there, and I love that about it. And they kind of do that now with the Young Justice continuation.
Mm-hmm.
They just chuck random character. I miss when they used to do that. Like not everybody needs an origin story, you can just kind of chuck these characters in there, and then kids will accept it, be like, oh yeah, okay, this is a new character, and now I'm watching this Hawk Girl and Hawkman and Jon Stewart. And I love this is not little known fact about me, but I guess kind of a niche thing, like probably unusual, is my favorite characters are probably Aquaman and Martian Manhunter. And I used to be big on the comic book scene on Tumblr, and I made like this post about why Aquaman is not lame, and nobody actually knows anything about Aquaman, and it went viral. So I was known as like the Aquaman expert for a little while. But I also just, I guess this goes back to aliens, right? Martian Manhunter and the Green Lantern Corps. I love those. Really goes back to being space superheroes. So I guess I'm discovering on your podcast, David, that I am a huge sci-fi fan.
I mean, you can have
Oh,
your DC superheroes, but you can have your DC, space superheroes.
yep. I mean, I also just love Superman. Like people are always like, "Oh, he's like a Boy Scout. He's OP or whatever." It's like, you don't know Superman. Superman is the original superhero. He was first. And I really love that about him. I think he's so wholesome. And I think what attracts me to DC over Marvel, I think Marvel can be definitely more cohesive in a lot of ways in their universe and the stories they tell, and DC tends to be a little crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But there are more family stories. I feel like a lot of in the DC universe, there's more friendship, more camaraderie. Not that there isn't that obviously in the Marvel comics. I also love the Marvel comics, but especially like back then when I was especially comparing like the MCU and the state of Marvel comics now, I feel like in DC I just have this attraction to like the human condition that's explored in DC comics through their superheroes, especially like this dichotomy between Superman and Batman. And Batman is this kid that had privilege in ways that Clark Kent didn't, and vice versa. Clark Kent had his parents, he had a really great upbringing, but he was not economically advantaged. And Bruce Wayne was economically advantaged, but he didn't have his parents. And he's someone that chooses to do good despite his trauma. And Superman is someone that chooses to do good despite being privileged in a lot of ways. Like he chooses good without a reason, and Batman chooses good despite his reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love that dichotomy, and that's explored, everywhere in DC Comics. A really old, not really old for me, I guess, story that's explored is like this Green Lantern and Green Arrow crossover where Oliver Queen, because Hal Jordan is like this, he's like this big, Green Lantern Corps, like space cop kind of guy. And so when he comes back to Earth, he's just kind of not really in it. And so there's this storyline of Oliver showing how like the parts of Earth, these like deeper stories, like the people of Earth that are poor and have drug addictions and are, facing gentrification, loss of homes, and the side of conflict and the side of heroism that like Hal doesn't see because he's off fighting aliens and like all that stuff, and Oliver Queen is down on Earth really, you know, he's exploring the human condition, and I just love stories like that, and I feel like I don't always see that kind of stuff from Marvel, and that's why I'm so attached, I guess, to DC.
Oh, I like I loved your explanation for like what you're like how you're attached and what you're looking for in your DC comics and the DC characters, because it is totally different. And I think there's a Justice League and Avengers comic book crossover where the characters crossed over into different universes, and they like I think it like they kind of explained it like when the Justice League characters jumped over to the Marvel side, they see this population of people that hate people that are different, and oh, you have powers, you must be a mutant, you must be, somebody who thinks that they're superior to us. And then like on the other side, when like the Avengers popped over into the Justice League, and they're like, oh, you have like statues and everyone's like chill with you guys and loves what you do and is like tolerates you, and like it's got like that whole dichotomy of like how they've got the universe is set up. Like one is the Marvel one, the people with powers aren't really tolerated or attacked or hated, versus the DC side of things. So it is that, and it's interesting as a new comic book reader to DC. Like I tried jumping into different characters. Like I jumped into like Batgirl, and I jumped into Starfire, and I was trying to like read some of the later Batman comics that had come out. And reading them, it's such a different. It's different, like it's different stories, it's different, like, and like you said, it's really is an interesting character study with these different characters, where you are getting to see that versus like what Marvel puts out there and creates with their characters.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up, because I would say for me, comic books, sci-fi, all that stuff is really about escapism. And even though I'm looking for these stories about the human condition and like these meaningful stories, the X-Men, for example, love them, but their stories are inherently about oppression and discrimination. And, I'm a woman of color, so that's my lived experience. I'm not always looking for that when I'm reading comics, not that that's a bad thing. It's definitely not. It's, for a lot of people, that is cathartic to read their stories told using this metaphor. But for me, I guess I like that hopeful aspect of the DC comics, where I can pretend that there are heroes in the world and they're looked up to, and people just accept goodness. People accept differences. And so when I'm reading comics, I'm not always looking for a story about being other. Sometimes I'm looking for a story about where everybody is included and there's hope. And Superman is quite literally, like, his whole thing is being a symbol of hope. So it's really interesting that you bring that up.
I'm here to bring stuff up, whether it lands or not. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. I'm glad this time it landed. Yes. I do want to go back to Aquaman, just out of curiosity, because I come from the age of seeing like the Justice League back on the cheesy cartoon show, with Aquaman, blonde hair, orange shirt, green pants, with seahorses, leading him around on his chariot type of thing.
The Super Friends
Yeah,
Aquaman.
the cheesy Aquaman, and he got saddled with that for years. Like that's all anyone knew of Aquaman. And I remember when there was at one point, like I remember the cover of like Aquaman then had like long blonde hair, like the beard. He had like a hook for a hand, I think.
Yes.
And
Yes, I love that arc.
and
Yes, I think it's by David Peterson. I could be wrong.
and that like I feel like that was like the turning point for Aquaman's not a joke. But I'd love
Yeah.
to know more about like where, like if I was going to be getting into Aquaman or checking him out, like where would I go to get like a good Aquaman story?
Okay, so the first New 52 run of Aquaman is really good. I would say that's the place to read start off with like kind of the modern Aquaman. That's because it pokes fun at that silly perception of him and really flips it on its head. He's very serious. He's very regal, very king-like. And it's funny that you mentioned the Super Friends version of him because in Batman, the 1966 show, he's pretty silly. He's like that same level of silliness, him and Robin, but he was allowed to grow out of that. And for whatever reason, even though Aquaman has some very serious portrayals and in media since then, he wasn't allowed to really grow out of that. But yeah, that's actually where I would start. I would start with also, let me think. Yeah, that's where I would start. The New 52 run because it's modern. The art is gorgeous. You don't have to have any background to start off with it. And it starts off with a heavy hitting story. So that's probably what I would read.
Awesome. I always like getting recommendations for things that are totally outside of my like the realm of knowledge that I have. And so, DC Comics is such a I think like everyone has their favorite things, of course. Like, and I have my favorite things when it comes to Marvel, but like with DC Comics, it's so new to me that whenever I get someone to ask about like, oh, tell me about DC Comics and who you love, like it's so niche where like people latch on to like a specific part of that DC Comics universe and are like, okay, you need to like read like the Batgirl comics, or you need to read like these Batman arcs or the Bat Family, or check this story out like with the Green Lantern Corps, like because everyone just gets into like these different characters and different parts where it's like I love getting to just find these characters and like check them out and be like, oh, that really like hits that vibe for me of getting into it and finding like new characters to appreciate.
Yeah, and that's true for comics in general, like Marvel as well. Image, it's Spawn. Like, I feel like that comics as a medium really knows how to grab a specific type of reader and keep them because there's something in comics for everyone, I think. There's just some amazing writers out there. Jeff Johns does that run that I was telling you about. It's the Aquaman run, and that one explores his like powers a lot too, which is why I recommend it, is because he doesn't talk to fish. That's a misconception, and it kind of deals with that also. But yeah, I agree. It's just there's something in comics for everybody. Like every superhero has something, every superhero story, and not just superheroes, because I read a ton of comics that are not superhero related. There's really always something that someone can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
Hook and Aquaman, by the way, it just came to my mind. It's Time and Tide. It's Peter David. Really good. I actually have that volume, and he signed it for me. So
yeah, that's awesome. Peter David is a wonderful author. I think I've read, because I think Peter David did at least one of the old school Star Wars books, if I'm not mistaken, and if not,
you might be right. You might be right. He might have done. He also wrote a ton of episodes of Justice League, I think.
Well, there you go. Maybe,
He was definitely, it was either Justice League or Young Justice. He writes episodes for them, or he did.
okay, because I like the name I recognized immediately. I was like, I know that name. I'm trying to figure out like where it was from, but I'm not going to Google it because it's cool. I don't need to know everything right now. I can know it later. Now with DC Comics and I guess one of the things, and they just recently announced like people James Gunn is going to be like heading up their new like film division that's going to be happening, and that's one of the things like as a Marvel like MCU person, like I always want DC to succeed because then it can push Marvel to like do better with what they're putting out. What would you love to see like as a movie from DC Comics? Like if you were to like be like, hey, James Gunn, yo, I need this movie. Like, what would you love to see?
I would love to see a Green Lantern movie. I would love to see a John. I know that's in the work. Is it in the works? It's in the works. A John Stewart film. I would love to see that. I'm actually not a huge fan of James Gunn, to be honest. I don't know how I feel about the direction that the DC cinematic universe is going or heading or was.
Mm-hmm.
I really loved the Shazam movie. It was really fun. But I think I would just like to see something true to the comics, like something hopeful with Superman, not dark and gritty. Dark and gritty is okay. Not really like Marvel either, where it's colorful and actiony. Just something akin to All-Star Superman, which is a really awesome standalone graphic novel, where it just kind of explores the hopefulness of Superman's character, or just something more akin to the Justice League animated series. This
Mm-hmm.
would be kind of what I would want, but I'm not an entertainment professional, so I don't know if I have any. Don't know how to translate the DC universe into the cinematic, world, because they've always really just succeeded in the serial form. Like the CW Superman show is really successful. The portrayal of Superman is really good in that. But it's like, how do you translate that into the films? I think one thing is like DC needs to I can't believe I didn't mention this. The Batman blew me away. Easily became like my tied with Spider-Verse for my favorite comic book film of all time. And one thing they did with that is like, I feel like DC doesn't need to flesh out an origin story. Everybody knows who Superman and Green Lantern and Wonder Woman and Batman are. Like, I feel like I would just like a story where, I don't know. I just don't know how to translate it to the cinematic universe. But I do love Henry Cavill as Superman. I'm really excited to see what he does with it. I totally understand why he left The Witcher. I know that people are like upset about it, but it honestly makes a lot of sense why he left, because he's a really big fan of The Witcher, and so am I. Love the Witcher series. But the people on that project were not as passionate as him. But I think he would rather be on a project where people are passionate about his character. And I think the people they're putting on Superman are passionate about Superman. And it seems like they're trying to go for a more hopeful, colorful route than Zack Snyder did. So we'll see how that goes.
Fingers are always crossed for DC Comics, because like they keep I'm not going to beat it to death as far as like the failings that they've had, but like I was really looking forward to Batgirl, and I was really looking forward to some of their stuff that they had announced or that they were working on. And it's like, well, now it's not happening, or now they're like, okay, we're going to have to figure out a new direction. And I think, I want to see these characters, and I will say, how many times do we need to see like Peter Parker's Uncle Ben get killed,
I know.
or you know, Thomas and Martha Wayne? You know, these are things that, and I don't know how well it is, like, because my kids, I don't know if they would get it, but like there's a certain generation where it's like everybody knows, like it is ingrained in the generations of people for like the last 30 or 40 years. We know these origin stories. You don't need to tell us the origin story for like the first 30 minutes. Like, just get us into these characters and let's go. And then, you know, fill it in later somehow. It's fine. You don't need to give us everything.
Yeah, and even though like the Batman was an early Bruce Wayne story, it was very much early Batman, they didn't have to flesh all that out. They still gave Batman a starter story with that film without having to do that. But yeah, I agree. And you know what? That's what I loved about actually Batman versus Superman, controversial as it may be, and Ben Affleck's Batman, is that he was a seasoned Batman. He had his whole Batcave. He's been through the Joker. He's got gray hairs. I loved that. I loved that he was established. He is Batman as we already know,
Mm-hmm.
and I will miss him dearly. I really wish he got more of a chance. That's what I want to see, you know, like we don't need to see all this beginner stuff. Like give us Justice League. Just give us, I don't know, give us something that's not so like I don't know. I don't know what the word is, but you know, just spoon-fed, I guess.
Right. Just throw us in. Like, throw us in the deep end, and let's see how we as the audience can swim with these characters that, you know, maybe we don't always know about them, but hey, they got cool powers and can do stuff, and let's go.
And that's also the CW show Superman and Lois, which is super successful. Is good too because he just already exists. You know, Superman already exists in their world. No one has to accept him. The people don't have to come to accept him. He's there. And it just tells the story of those types of stories already with him.
Absolutely. See, we got it all worked out.
And Tyler Hoechlin is really great as Clark.
He is. I liked him when he showed up on Supergirl. I was like, okay, you know what? I like his Superman. I can dig it.
I know. I was skeptic at first, but he really blew us all away. So
now, Raisa, I mean, we talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but one of the things, and for people that don't know, like I'm on Instagram and I find people that do incredible work in cosplay and characters that I like, and you know, again, I stumbled across your Kiki with your husband as Tombo, and have been following your account for a little bit, and getting to see all the cool stuff that you have been doing, and you are a cosplayer. And I guess, you know, the first question is like, how did you get into doing cosplay? Like, what was your entry point for that? What's your origin story? Tell me.
Yeah. So I learned how to sew at a really young age. I started sewing like on a machine when I was like 9 or 10. Obviously, my mom taught me how to like hand sew. And when I was a kid, I used to make little outfits for my dolls and stuff. And it really started, I was always, of course, into comics, and I always kind of knew about the convention world, like the Comic Cons. Um, but sometime in middle school, it was like Halloween, and I wanted to go as Batgirl. And so I was like looking up stuff about, you know, how to make a Batgirl costume, see if anybody else has done it. And I came across this term cosplay. And I started following like these heavy hitters in the cosplay world, like Yaya Han, Kamui Cosplay, Kinpatsu Cosplay. And I was hooked right then and there. And here I am. That's kind of just how I got started. I was already a seamstress. And back then, like, there wasn't, when I started, like armor cosplays weren't that huge because we were all learning as a community. Like there was no EVA foam or Worbla yet. So most costumes were sewn, and most costumes were like comic book characters, like interpretations of these flat 2D characters from comic books. We didn't have the MCU yet either. So that's kind of where I started.
with you getting in like, at a young age and then growing, I have to wonder, like, with your experience in the cosplay world, how has it changed? Like, has I know, obviously it has changed, but how has it changed from when you first got into it to now? Like, has there been like a big shift, just with,
Oh
like,
yeah.
with cosplay itself or cosplay culture? um
Oh, for sure, for sure. And I talk about it all the time. And actually, I'm from Florida, which there's actually Florida actually has a huge convention scene, and but there are true comic cons, like cons that are centered not really around pop culture but comic books. And part of that is because so many old and well-known comic book creators retire and move to Florida. So there was always comic book creators, and the trading scene there is huge. But that kind of also meant that cosplay was not that welcome in the Florida convention scene. Um, Especially, I won't name any cons, but like some convention runners were didn't like cosplay because they felt like it wasn't like, it was like, scantily clad women, and they were distracting from the comics or whatever.
mhm.
So in that sense, now though, cosplay is kind of like part of the attraction of going to, which is funny because cosplay at Comic Cons has existed forever,
Mhm.
forever, since the first science fiction fair in New York City, like in the 40s. So people have been dressing up to go to these conventions. So in that sense, it's definitely more welcome. But back when I started, the MCU obviously wasn't a thing. So now, like, I feel like most cosplay I see, like MCU cosplayers are definitely the plurality, if not even the majority of costumes. And so the study material cosplayers have now is definitely more. You have many movies, many screen caps that you can download from the internet to kind of give you inspiration. And before we were, like I said, kind of guessing based off 2D comics or very just 720p screenshots from YouTube. Um, and also there weren't as many like ready-made cosplays available. And now like you can buy a cosplay and it's pretty accurate. Like nobody ever makes a Deadpool cosplay. Like, there's no point. There are some really, really Deadpool is like one of the original cosplay characters, and there's no point. Like you're never gonna, well, you can, but the costumes you can buy for Deadpool are just that good that you don't have to make one. So I definitely think now there is more acceptance and like more prevalence of people who don't necessarily make their costumes. They're different worlds. I'm definitely in the part of the community that enjoys the craftsmanship of it rather than the role play aspect. So that's another way it's changed. And I'm definitely very nostalgic for those times for when sewing costumes, because I'm a seamstress at heart. Like I do armor, but I miss when sewing was more prevalent because now I feel like the big armors do kind of distract from these amazing seamsters and seamstresses that like sew their costumes, but you can't tell that they how much work they put into it
Mhm.
as much as you can with like a big armor costume. So those are a few ways. Like I've definitely seen the community evolve hugely. It's also so much bigger. So many more people are into cosplay now than they were back in the day.
It was something where, like, even just because I've been doing the podcast going on almost 7 years at this point, and I just learned earlier this year about build books and about people that, again, like with the seamstress aspect of it, where they're taking pictures of the stitches that they use or the techniques that they're using, for sewing or for doing the cuts and everything in the fabric, to where it's like you're taking these pictures to show everyone, like, hey, these are the skills that I have in the construction of this cosplay that looks, if you're looking at that person's like fabric type style cosplay, right, versus someone that maybe has built the armor or built something, and you're like, Well, that clearly, like the armor, of course, like it's flashy and everything, and I'm not going to say anything. Like I'm not saying like that there's not skill in what they're doing, but it's like it's two different skills, like
Right.
to
They're very
master.
different from each other.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
it's totally like blowing my mind because you see sometimes the winners of like cosplay contests and you're like, well, how could that person have won? Like their costume again doesn't like it's not like flashy or it's not like over the top, and it's like it must there's technical merits to it that as a person that does not sew or does not craft, like I would not notice that, but other people do, and I've heard stories of like judges where they go up and they're like, "Let me see your stitching," or "Let me check it out," and they look at the cosplay and everything, and that's really cool that there are people that recognize and look for that stuff.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to have judges that know about that aspect because I've been sewing obviously much longer than I've been doing armor. And I also do 3D modeling and 3D printing. And as much as I do those skills, and I'm significantly more experienced with sewing, and it's comes way more naturally to me than those other two. I still think sewing is the harder craft. And part of that is because, and luckily anyone can get into EVA foam. You can just go into Joanne or Michael's or Hobby Lobby even nowadays, buy some craft foam or EVA foam, watch a tutorial by Kamui Cosplay, buy a pattern from Kinpatsu Cosplay or whatever, and put something together. And for the longest time, sewing resources were not as accessible in that there's a huge learning curve. There's a much bigger time and education investment. You might have had to go to school to really learn the technical ins and outs of pattern drafting and tailoring. And that's why it kind of sucks. I wish it was easier for people to recognize how difficult it is. I feel like 9 times out of 10 people think that whenever a sewing costume wins, they don't think that they deserve it. They think the big flashy armor deserves the win. But I wish people knew how much technical skill and focus and just educational prerequisite it requires to
Hmm.
sew something technically advanced. Because you can't always tell looking at a costume that it is technically advanced. Like my Elizabeth costume, it's a tailored jacket. It was my first foray into tailoring, which is specifically like suits and collars and things like that. Um, it was a corset that I drafted from scratch. I had to bone it. I had to do all these techniques I've never done before with sewing, and it's more technically complex than it looks. And so I guess that's one way I wish things hadn't changed is like the kind of knowledge within the cosplay community of how much work goes into sewing for sure.
Absolutely. And if people are on your Instagram, you actually have a really great side by side of your Elizabeth cosplay from 2017 to 2021. And just seeing the difference in the two cosplays is fascinating to me. Like just how different the from 2017, so that you're 4 years of of growth and skills and everything, and the difference it has made.
Yeah, I love that picture. I didn't expect it to do as well as it did. I guess people really like those kinds of side by sides on Instagram. But I guess one thing, regardless of what kind of cosplay you're doing, whether it's armor or sewing or whatever, one thing that I think is a learned skill, but you can overcome really early is just attention to detail. I would give my biggest advice to anyone wanting to get into cosplay is if you want your stuff to start out good, you want to get a head start, you want your costumes to look better than other people's first costumes, don't cut corners. I cut a lot of corners when it comes to sewing, but that's because I've been sewing for so long and I know which corners I can cut without it looking bad. Um, but it really attention to detail and like choosing to give a costume the time and patience that it deserves is what's really going to take your costume from a beginner to somebody that looks like they've already had some experience.
Now with your cosplays, one of the questions I ask all of my cosplay people is like when you're picking a cosplay to do, are you picking it based on your love of the character? Is it that you said, "Oh wow, I really love like this outfit and I want to do that"? Is it a mixture of both where you want to like do the character because of the outfit? Like where do you land on how you decide what you're going to do?
So every cosplayer is different. I follow a lot of cosplayers that choose their cosplays based on like the technical design of the costume and how much they like the design of the costume. Um, for me, I am not as disciplined as those cosplayers. I have to be emotionally attached to my character, or I'm like not motivated to make the costume. I have to even with the ones that I am emotionally attached to, I have to like have something like the soundtrack from the games playing in the background, or I have to be like playing the games or watching the movies or something at the same time to like keep me motivated.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's kind of a mixture of both, like being attached to the character and enjoying their character design, but I would say just like being attached to the character is my biggest factor. Like I only want to cosplay characters that I admire or that I identify with. And like that was part of like why I did Miss Marvel. She was really the first superhero I ever seen that's like me. Um even though her costume is pretty simple, but I love shoulder pads and she has those shoulder pads. I have way too many costumes in my like to-do list that have these massive shoulder pads. And every cosplayer I think gets one of those like signature things. Like Kamui cosplay, she loves that like organic bikini armor, redheads. I think I like redheads too. I have a lot of redhead characters on my list also. But yeah, I guess for me, it's like I definitely have to really be attached to the character, or I just won't feel motivated to make the costume. For a lot of cosplayers, the design is the motivation, the like technical challenge of making something. But I'm not that disciplined. I like have to be really into the character to want to make it.
So you mentioned that you had a few characters on your list, and I know every cosplayer generally. I found some people that don't, that just spur of the moment will make cosplays out of nowhere. But who as characters are on your list of characters that you would love to cosplay in the future?
So I have been working on FemShep, female shepherd from Mass Effect on and off for years. So that's my dream. That's my holy grail costume. And the reason I've never finished it is because I've never been satisfied enough with the final product of whatever it is that I'm making to live up to my expectations. So actually recently I decided I'm just going to 3D model the costume from scratch and 3D print it because that's the only way I'll be able to achieve what I want with the costume. And that's why it's taking so long learning. I've been learning Fusion 360 the last year or two, and it's very technically challenging. So that is like my dream holy grail costume. Miss Marvel was actually one of those spur of the moment where I just randomly decided to make it, and then I made it in like a day. And it wasn't even on my list. But trying to think of a character. Batgirl is on my list for sure. And the reason I haven't done her yet is because I can't decide which Batgirl I want to do. So I have Barbara Gordon on the list. I have Cassandra Cain on the list. And I also have Nyssa, who is the Batgirl from the Batman Beyond universe. And she looks just like me. She is a brown skinned, black haired girl. And her costume, she has these massive shoulder pads. Her costume design is so cool. So those are the three Batgirls on my list, and I have to pick one. So I don't want to do a million Batgirls. Um, who else is on my list? I really want to do the Skyrim steel plate armor next. That's probably my next costume after Liara. And I'm also working on Starlight from The Boys right now. But that one's going to be really quick. That's kind of one where it's like I just wanted something quick to make. And I'm actually modifying a Spirit Halloween costume. And I thought it was going to be fast because I was going to like modify something already existing. but it turns out I'm like remaking the vast majority of it from scratch. So yeah, that's like kind of my upcoming stuff, I think.
Okay, that's awesome. And not only are you a cosplayer, but you're also doing cosplay photography.
Yes. So I recently started my cosplay photography page. It's at Rice Photo. It's linked on my Instagram as well. And with that, I've kind of been always taking my own cosplay photos. And I've always really been, I'm definitely more of an editor than I am a photographer. I've always like I've been Photoshop like from a very young age. I've always messed around with Photoshop and stuff. So not that there aren't amazing cosplay photographers in the space. There definitely are some really amazing ones, but I felt like there was a gap in the world of cosplay photography that I wanted to fill. So that's why I kind of started doing that. I wanted to kind of tailor my photography specifically to cosplay and like offer more more colorful, more like customized type of photography. A lot of photographers have their own style, but I wanted to be a kind of photographer that could modify my style and my editing to match the character and like highlight the costume more than just taking pictures in my own style. So that's kind of the gap I wanted to fill in the photography world.
I have to say, looking at your photography page, there's the photo of Diamond Quality Cosplay. It's the one in the center.
Yes, that's my favorite.
Lovely, lovely picture.
I love that photo. And I actually have a reel on that page and also in my highlights, the like editing highlight, the before and after. I love that picture. It was literally like on my balcony. I have this brick wall. And that's where I took that. And I just was able to kind of turn this shot that wasn't that great into like this really creepy vampire-y like shot with like moonlight coming in with my editing. So, and you'll see how horrible the picture, if you look at that before and after, how horrible the picture actually is. And it's my editing that turns it into what it is. I'm definitely not as much of a photographer as I am a Photoshop enthusiast.
But it's cool because and there's a few other photographers that I follow, and I love that they share. And I haven't checked out your reel. I'll have to do it after we stop recording. But I love that they share the process from here's the picture, here's the steps that you took to get it to the final product, and how like it is I don't want to say magic because it's not magic. You have these technical skills that you are like clearly like mastering and knocking things out of the park. But it's so stunning to see like the different changes, like the color changes, or adding this or adding that, or taking something away to make it just such a great shot.
I love that also. I follow a lot of cosplay photographers that share like their camera settings and everything because I'm not very good about that at manual photography. And so I love learning like their camera settings, and I love watching people. There's some that post YouTube videos about their like compositing process. And so I have a highlight on my profile, also like my editing highlight, where I post a lot of before and afters kind of, and there's like a what's in this photo type uh, story that I do where I like list out all the changes I made, all the edits I made. And with compositing, I feel like there's two types of cosplay photographers. There's like one extreme where it's like they take a picture and they apply their own style to it, but they don't edit, they don't add effects to it because they really want the photo to be about the costume. And the other end where it's like the composite is the draw of the photo, where it's not as much about the costume but rather like the all the crazy lighting and photoshopping they add to it. And I really wanted to fill this space and become the kind of photographer that I was looking for, where it's like I'm in the middle, where I'm highlighting the costume but I also add minimal special effects to kind of make it seem like the character is really coming to life and like the character is really in the world that they come from. So with like the diamond quality costume, I didn't edit his costume in any way. I didn't add anything that obscures his costume, but I added that moonlight and that smoke to give it that like vampire vibe. But I didn't edit the costume or anything to make it take away from the costume being the center of the shot.
Hmm.
So that's kind of my process, is how I like to do it.
That's awesome. Well, Raisa, I feel like I've had such a wonderful time talking with you, and I'd continue more, but alas, I only get so much time with people, and I've taken much more of your time than I had anticipated. Um, but for people that have listened and they're like, I want to check out your cosplay work or your photography work, what are the best places for them to find you and to see what you are up to?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I had a lot of fun talking to you and talking about my process and my thoughts. I am definitely most active on Instagram, so that's at Raisin Cosplay. And you'll definitely find me most active on there. I also like to share videos like sometimes on my TikTok or my YouTube, but nothing compared to my Instagram. That's really where I live. So I would direct people to there.
Awesome. I will have all the links to that and to what else you're doing, your cosplay photography. I'll make sure to have the link to your Instagram for that one in the show notes and on the website and Facebook page. So if you are listening, you can just click and it will take you there, and make sure that you do the following and the commenting and liking, because the algorithm is always something that I will always harp on and talk about, to get people to interact with posts and to follow, because that way, not only are you discovering people like Raisa, but other people will also stumble across her work, like I did when I stumbled across somebody sharing your workout, and I was like, hey, I like the stuff that you're doing. Let me hit the follow button and comment and share out stuff. And now here you are on the podcast. So I just want to say thank you for taking the time out of your schedule and hanging out with me and talking about the stuff that you love.
Of course. Thank you so much for inviting me. I had a lot of fun.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Tales from the Fandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.